I was with my sister this past weekend hiking in Colorado. We were talking about this very subject. She can't really get away from me talking about this subject. She's probably really tired of it. And we were talking about what happened to your daughter. And she lives in Kentucky in the Southeast. So not nearly as much access as I feel like we have out here in the West on situational problems with consuming animal products. So
Mhm.
she said, "Oh, Dotsie," she goes, "I know at least 15 friends, if not more,
Mhm.
whose child was allergic to their breast milk.
Mhm.
And they went to see their physician, and the physician, pediatrician, told them to stop breastfeeding their child,
Right.
not look into what the mother is eating or ingesting or drinking that is in their breast milk." And so,
Yep.
which is just just blows me away, because that milk that mother of every species, right, makes for their own young is a specific formulation for
Exactly.
that baby to thrive. And so
Yep.
these pediatricians, do they just not know that there could be something that the baby is
Yes.
allergic to, whether it's a cow's milk allergy or nut or what I literally was like tripping down the mountain hearing this, almost in tears, because what a horrible thing for the mother to sit to know, I now have to stop breastfeeding, and maybe they've only
Exactly.
been able to
Yeah.
do.
And then you asked an excellent question, and I was absolutely heartbroken. I was told to stop breastfeeding. But I think, given the severity of her situation, they suggested it as a quicker route for her to recover. But the fact is that it can take up to 4 weeks for the protein to come out of your system. So if someone, I guess, if the child is severely sick and you have to do something very quickly, you have to feed her something, right, during those 4 weeks while the protein is working its way out of the mother's milk. But if they're having the kind of less severe symptoms, maybe perhaps when she first started to have symptoms, I immediately eliminated dairy. I could have been able to help her and probably carried on breastfeeding. But because it takes that long to get rid of the protein from your breast milk, I think that's one reason, is the severity of the symptoms. But when I went back to work, that's exactly what I did. Like, giving up breastfeeding was so hard because I know that breast milk is protective against allergies because it has all these immunoglobulins and proteins that can help a child thrive and fight against diseases later on in life. So when I went back to work, I helped moms eliminate dairy. And that's actually, at the time, my colleagues thought I was mad because they're kind of like, wow, why would you eliminate dairy? Moms need dairy. They need the calcium. And, it's such a battle. And that was 8 years ago. Nowadays, I think people are more aware. But back then, it was really frowned upon. And my colleagues almost thought I was kind of malpracticing because I was telling moms to cut out dairy from their diet. But I think that's a really good thing to raise awareness of, is that the first thing to do should be elimination of these allergenic foods from the mom's diet rather than switching
And then
to a man-made milk.
could the mother, let's say, just because of awareness and education knowledge that we're speaking about right now, then a mother might have a baby who's not feeding well, crying, cramping, and
Mm-hmm.
that maybe just only goes on for a week. And now they have the knowledge to go, okay, could be an allergy. Let's test
Right.
these out. Would
Yep.
an opportunity for the mother to continue breastfeeding be they stop, continue pumping so that they
Yes.
continue lactating, maybe until the protein's out, and then they can
Yep.
successfully breastfeed for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
When you
so
talk,
that's definitely an option. But I think even with pumping, so that's what happened with me. I carried on pumping, but the supply just dropped. So it wasn't an option for me. But I think if it works and keeps the milk supply up, pumping is definitely an option. You would just kind of throw your pumped milk away, right? But just keep the supply up.
Right.
And hopefully go back to breastfeeding.
you mentioned allergens, so there are other things that
also a mother could be coming out through her breast milk that are giving reactions to children. I know we're focusing on dairy, but there are others, and you are an expert on allergies. Can you tell us a little bit of the top four, top five
Right.
allergens that mothers should look at? And
Yep.
is
So
dairy number
milk,
one?
dairy is number one, and soy is number two. And actually, there's a lot of cross reactivity between soy and milk allergy. So there's anything in the data between 15 to 60% of those who are allergic to dairy might also react to soy. So we always say eliminate soy and dairy at the same time. Egg is number three. So these are all the milk, eggs, soy, and then maybe seafood, fish, sometimes gluten. Those are not kind of the main ones, but could still play a role.
And nuts? That's the famous one.
And nuts, yeah.
It's interesting because I learned about this from hearing you speak at a seminar, and the thing that struck me is that you are Asian, and your kids are either full or partly Asian.
Oh, fully Asian. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Asians and dairy and other ethnic groups in dairy, because white people actually don't have as a milk allergy nearly as often. And maybe this subject obsesses me. This might be why the word's not getting out in conventional medicine, because most this is not something there's only 15% or so of white people who have dairy allergies, but it's so much higher in other ethnic groups. Can you talk to that?
So can I just make a little correction there? So it's
Please do.
I think the 15% figure is lactose intolerance. So so there's a big difference. So you might be lactose intolerant, but not dairy allergic. So an allergy is where your immune system is activated and trying to fight the food. So it's seeing an enemy in your system, and the whole body becomes inflamed trying to get rid of this food. Whereas intolerance is more a localized reaction, so your gut can't break down the lactose. So that's lactose intolerance and dairy allergy are very different things. So the 15%, I think, in Caucasians refers to the lactose intolerance rate. And lactose intolerance rate for Asians is a shocking 95%. So it blows my mind that dairy is now such a trendy food in Asian countries. So, when I went back to Taiwan, where I'm originally from, and I wanted to get coffee and tea with soy milk, where actually I grew up drinking soy milk. You couldn't find dairy very easily back then. You would drink soy milk. But it's kind of reversed. So now when I try to look for coffee and teas with soy milk, they said, no, we only do dairy. But most 95% of those people consuming dairy are intolerant, which means that they cannot break down lactose in their gut. So the lactose passes through to the colon, where it basically rots, and then you get all these symptoms like bloating, diarrhea, cramping. It's crazy.
And the lactose is the sugar in dairy. To clear that up for people, I just recently saw Crazy Rich Asians. Very funny movie. And the actress in it, who's Asian, was trying to just prove that she really is authentically, fully 100% Asian. And the way she did that was she said, yep, I'm lactose intolerant. And the whole theater starts laughing because 95% of them were Asian who went to see this movie.
I understand.
So it's like, what about other groups? How?
So what I've read is, I think Hispanics is 50%, and African Americans around 75%. So it's actually really the Caucasians who can tolerate it. And what's really interesting is I came across these studies showing that Asians who are born in this country, so born in Western countries, UK, USA, and Canada, have a much higher, like something up to 40% higher rate of dairy allergy, not intolerance, allergy, compared to Asians who are born in Asia. So that's really interesting to me. And we see data like that relating to breast cancer, for example. So Asians who live in America have a higher rate of instance of breast cancer compared to Asians living in Asia. And for me, that suggests everything to do with diet, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you have the same genes, is the environment that you're living in that's predisposing you. So perhaps it's, you know, the food that the moms are eating when they're pregnant, when they live in this country, so that, you know, when they're born, they're already sensitized. So, you know, so as I said earlier, the food proteins, if a mom has leaky gut, it's passing through to the child. So the child's immune system, which is immature in the mom's womb, is still seeing all these food proteins and thinking, I don't like those. I don't like that. So I'm just going to be allergic. So maybe that's why Asians born in this country has a higher incidence of allergies.
So when you were giving the stat of 95% of Asians are lactose intolerant, right? What percentage are allergic? Is it a big difference?
The data is really hard to interpret because maybe we'll go on to that later, but there is no gold standard test for allergies. So
I wanted to jump into that. Let's do it. The difference between the types of tests, because that's what people are wondering now. Like they're sitting there going, oh my gosh, how do I get tested? What do I do? How do I clear this up? Right. And the difference between IgG test and IgE, I think it's the perfect time.
And you've stated that they're not very accurate in terms of detecting, and sometimes they won't detect.
That's right. So it depends on the kind of allergy. So just quickly to answer that previous question, because I think it's an important statistic, the incidence of allergy has gone up 50% in the last 10 years, or they kind of have estimated. But if you read different studies, they'll give you different rates of prevalence because it depends on what kind of test they use. So the data suggests anywhere between 2.5 to 5% of people. But, you know, that's quite a wide variation as well. So now I'm going to talk about the tests so we can kind of maybe understand a little bit more why it's so difficult to diagnose it.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.